Okay, good evening. I'd like to call this regular meeting of council to order Tuesday, January 13th, 2026, 6 p.m. Meeting in the council chambers, Town of St. Mary's. This meeting is being streamed live on the Town of St. Mary's YouTube page. The Council for the Town of St. Mary's acknowledges with gratitude and respect that we're gathering on the traditional lands of the Haudenosaunee, people of the Longhouse, giving thanks for all creation. I'll begin this evening by asking for declarations of pecuniary interest, starting with Councillor Craigmile.
None.
Councillor Edney.
None.
Councillor Luna.
None.
Councillor Lucas.
None.
Councillor Pridham.
None.
Councillor Alward.
None.
And I have none. The agenda was circulated. Are there any errors, omissions, or problems with the agenda as circulated? Councillor Luna?
There was one,
Just,
sorry, I wanted it, but.
yeah, just get you at your mic too. If you
There was one agenda, or that Councillor Lucas was noted as absent and present, and I had the date, and I'm sorry, I've lost it now, but. They're for the minutes. Oh, you're talking about our agenda, I'm sorry. December 9th. Yes.
Okay, yeah, thank you. That's duly noted.
Yeah.
Okay, appreciate that. Okay, anything with regards to the agenda? Okay, so I'll seek a motion that the January 13th, 2026 regular council meeting agenda be accepted as presented. Someone willing to move that? Councillor Craigmile moves. Councillor Edney seconds. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Item number 4 is our public input period with regards to items on the agenda. I have received nothing. I'll defer to our clerk. Do we receive anything today? Nothing received. Okay, then we'll move on to item number 5. We have a delegation this evening from Mr. Ian Morton with regards to Bill 21, Protect Our Food Act. Mr. Morton, welcome. Thank you for coming. You can just hit your microphone and the floor is yours.
Red light. There we go. All right. Thank you very much for having me, councillors, Mayor Strathty. I appreciate the opportunity to come before you and speak to and specifically seek your endorsement for Bill 21, enacting the Protect Our Food Act 2025. So I want to give you just a little bit of my background just to start us off, to give a little perspective on why I'm here. My name is Ian Morton, and while I reside in and love Stratford, St. Mary's has become near and dear to my heart over the last many years. I grew up in rural Huron County. Please don't hold that against me. I've lived in Stratford for 16 years, and I've worked as an educator in Perth County for 26 years, including the last 10 years here in St. Mary's at DCVI. In all that time, from my upbringing to today, agriculture has played an important role in my life, from spending most of my summers and weekends on friends' farms, and then as a teacher learning about my students and their families' lives in Perth County and in rural communities within. I've learned this significance as I grew up and as an adult of how important our local agricultural sector is to our economies, to the livelihood of our communities, and to the vitality of Perth County and the families that reside here. Another large part of my growth is, as a person, was the need to help others. Probably why I chose education as my career choice. I also spent a lot of my personal time volunteering in many different aspects. And this has led me into the political sphere as a way to continue to help even more and more people in our communities. During the 2025 provincial election, I ran for the Green Party in Perth Wellington. I care about people greatly, but also about the earth and our lands that we're blessed with. And then through the heavy involvement in politics over the last decade, I feel I have a pretty good understanding of the pressures facing communities in Perth County, specifically St. Mary's, Stratford, and rural areas as well. So here we come to the great need for housing across the province, and hence a lot of the actions that are being undertaken by our provincial government. St. Mary's obviously is growing in many ways, which is great, and so many, and across the province this is happening. So we're being faced with many land development choices they're being made, enacted, sometimes quite quickly. Provincial legislation Bill 5 now specifically allows for overriding of provincial rules and regulations, as well as municipal policies and procedures, through the continued use of MZOs or the new potential with special economic zones. So in order to protect our agricultural sector, because while we need homes, we still need to balance sprawl with responsible development. So in order to protect our agricultural sector, which is of course vital for so many economies in Perth County and across the province, to protect the autonomy of municipalities to be able to make their own decisions on how development happens within their communities, and to make sure that farmers and families have decisions and choices that they can make as well, we come to the creation, the need for the creation of Bill 21. MPP Mike Schreiner of Guelph and leader of the Green Party of Ontario, along with independent MPP Bobby Ann Brady of Haldeman Norfolk, have recognized the increased pressure that our lands are under, specifically farmlands, and have co-written Bill 21 in response to these pressures. Bill 21 would establish the Food Belt Protection Plan Advisory Committee. This would be a committee made up of independent stakeholders in the agricultural business, in soil sciences, and in agricultural land decisions. There would be no politicians involved. The committee's function would be to make recommendations for a food belt protection plan that would ensure the preservation and enhancement of a geographically continuous agricultural land base. So hence we get the food belt. Much like our understanding of the green belt is, where we have environmentally sensitive lands, important lands for biodiversity and habitat, the food belt would then create a similar idea, but based around our food security, protecting our agricultural lands as well for future generations. The bill also would amend the Planning Act with respect to land that is zoned for prescribed agricultural use. The bill provides that land cannot be rezoned and that uses permitted on the land cannot be changed unless an agricultural impact assessment has been carried out. So there are ways to still create zoning changes within municipalities so that it suits their needs, but it would have to go through this agricultural impact assessment to make sure that proposed changes to zoning are still following along with the intent of protecting farmland when necessary and then creating growth when it's appropriate and necessary as well. This restriction would apply to all decisions regardless of declaration of MZOs or special economic zones as well. So it would create protections against governments coming in and overriding municipalities in these ways. So that's the base understanding of what it is. It is a fairly straightforward bill, but I will welcome questions if you have them. I'll try to answer them the best I can, which we'll see how that goes. Several municipalities have already endorsed the effort to protect the future of our agricultural lands. They know that without these protections, we will continue to lose these vitally important lands that contribute to our economies, to our food security, to families' well-being. And final note, just our farmland once developed, once that soil is paved over, it can never be the same again. It will never grow crops as it could have. It will never feed families as it could have. So I am here tonight asking for support. I'm specifically asking for St. Mary's Council's public endorsement of Bill 21. The efforts to protect our land, our food security, and our local economies, our municipal autonomy. We must stand for farmers, for land, and for rural communities such as St. Mary's. And I very much appreciate having this time to speak to you and give you a very brief overview of Bill 21. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for that. Questions from council? Councilor Craig Mott?
Oh, I thought I was off the hook there.
Yeah.
Thank you, through the mayor. I, for one, fully support the agricultural land. However, I struggle a little bit with Bill 21, thinking that a small community like St. Mary's, I think would have to have a very different approach than even somebody like Stratford, go on to Kitchener-Waterloo, and then completely different again from the GTA. So I'm not sure that it can solve all across the province. And if we're losing 320 acres daily, how many acres around St. Mary's have we been losing? I mean, I think those 320 acres daily are in the GTA. So I can see the GTA constantly expanding and then saying, well, we expand, we won't let any of these little communities who get no say do anything. And that's a real issue with me. I'm just not sure that we down the road would get treated fairly being a small rural community. far as, you know, I'll listen to what you have to say, but I mean, that's just my over-the-top thoughts.
Yeah, of course, I can respond to that as well. Certainly, I mean, with the growth of the GTA, we can expect the majority of those farmlands currently are being, those 320 acres a day are being pulled out of those areas. The purpose of this bill is to make sure that when we see growth outside of the GTA, which, I mean, we do, we have the developments at the north end of the city, which, you know, and that's great. We need the house, of the town. We need that development for families, obviously. I think that the point is to make sure that when development needs to happen and with the provincial government's focus on building housing, or at least they tell us that, the focus of building housing and affordable housing, that the worry is that we're just going to create the answer will be new suburbs out on the fringes, more sprawl into agricultural lands. We see in Wilmot Township, the MZO brought in there, and so there's been that's been a big issue as well, and that's not very far from us here. And that's the fear, that the MZOs, the special economic zones, will be used to override municipal policies, procedures, your autonomy to make the decisions that are best for your community, for St. Mary's, for Stratford, for Listowel, for wherever it might be. So I do understand, certainly the growth does not impact St. Mary's like it would in the GTA. I absolutely agree with you. I do think that we need to make sure that if our local farmers don't want to have their lands taken from them, or they don't want them developed in certain ways, that they have a measure of control of that. And certainly in Wilmot, we're seeing that is not the case. And then also this helps to put a priority on, if we can establish the food belt, protect these agricultural lands, this will help to put an emphasis on development within communities as opposed to just more sprawl, which then of course results in more infrastructure that the town is responsible for, more services, et cetera. You know what goes along with that. So the idea is to protect this really important food security, especially in the face of all the pressures from the south. Protect against unlimited sprawl, which we do see more in the GTA, but the prime agricultural lands in the province like Perth County is right in the center of that, right? All across southwestern Ontario and up into some of the lands of the Greenbelt as well. So that is the purpose of it. But I do understand your point that we are maybe not the biggest fish compared to Toronto. I hope that answered. Yeah.
Councilor Luna, yeah.
Thank you, Worship. Well, I think no matter where the sprawl happens, it's eventually going to affect all of us because our food supply is going to be affected, correct? So I would like to support a motion. Do we have a motion? Jen? There is? Well, there's samples, but how do we pick a sample, or?
So what we can handle this a couple ways, Councilor Luna. You can either put something on the floor, or you can bring a notice of motion for the next meeting and go through it that way. It's whatever you choose. We can handle it tonight, or you could put something together with the clerk for the next meeting, or it's however you want to proceed. That'd be up to you.
Okay. Is there any urgency to this, or when is the bill coming?
So the bill, there isn't a lot of urgency. So I'm here obviously representing Mike Schreiner and Bobby M. Brady and Bill 21. The legislation, the bill should be read in the House in May. Obviously, our provincial government is off for a while right now. So the anticipated date is at some point in May. So the strategy is to try to continually bring more and more municipalities on board and continue to keep this kind of in the news cycle so that it gets in front of people and people understand what this is trying to do, what Bill 21 is trying to do, what it's trying to, and trying to kind of push back against just kind of unlimited development so that we're a little more cognizant of the impact we're having on communities around us, yeah. So it could certainly come to the next meeting if you wish, or a motion on the floor tonight would, whatever's best for you guys.
Thank you for that. I would suggest a notice of motion for next meeting, please.
Okay. Further questions, Councilor Pridham? Yeah.
Thank you, through your worship. I'm curious about the areas, municipalities, townships surrounding the GTA, and what's their response to this?
So a lot of the lands around the GTA already fit into the green belt. So this would be kind of in conjunction, but in addition to those lands, because they already have protections in place. So even agriculture, like if we're talking about the Holland Marsh north of Caledon in there, they already have greenbelt protections, and with the public pushback, those lands have been saved from development. So that's what this would do. It would kind of enshrine agricultural lands as the greenbelt lands have been enshrined. So those natural spaces and our agricultural lands will be kind of enshrined as not untouchable, but we need to go through our due diligence to make sure that we're not taking those lands away without having really thought through the issue of food security and the livelihood of rural communities. So in terms of the motions that have gone forth, a lot of it is west of Toronto, because that's really, the Greenbelt kind of spans across the top a little bit, just in the Niagara Escarpment, but kind of Hamilton West is where we're looking at this point. That's where the push has been at this point, but it will expand to whatever agricultural lands are felt to be those municipalities that have significant agricultural lands. Hope that helps. Yeah, if I don't answer a question, please let me know.
Okay. Councillor Edney?
Thank you, Worship. Just thank you for your short form presentation, and obviously your passion's real. I see Senator Rob Black's fingerprints all over this.
I cannot speak to that.
We had him here last year for a Rotary event. He was the keynote speaker, and he probably gave us a 45-minute, much the same.
I would anticipate that a lot of this idea, whether he has his fingerprints on it or not, his impact of all of his work probably has played a part in it for sure, yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay. Further questions? Councillor Elwood? Yeah.
Thanks, Your Worship. I was curious, have you engaged with Matt Ray, our local MPP, on this issue at all?
In very limited ways. So email. So in the summer, Mike Schreiner came to Stratford, did an event talking around Bill 5 and the impacts it would have to municipal autonomy, to our, with these special economic zones, different land classes, and kind of a lot of the impacts that would play a part. So in response to that, there's been a Repeal Bill 5 campaign started in Stratford. Now, Mr. Ray does not have much to say towards that directly. In my correspondence with him through email, it was just a form letter returned talking about all the great things that Bill 5 will allow to happen by opening up development. The concern is then our local democracies, the best direction for those democracies. Sprawl may be the answer from their perspective, but it might not be from your perspective. So his response has been extremely limited. I don't specifically have a response on Bill 21, but this certainly came out of the threat of Bill 5 in just taking lands that may be significant for the well-being of Ontarians. So yeah, it's been very minimal, I'm afraid.
Councillor Lucas?
Thank you, through the mayor. Again, thank you for the presentation. Again, I definitely support agriculture in our community. I guess I look at this as again, it would be another provincial layer on top of. So as far as providing autonomy to the municipalities, this is still a bill coming from the province saying this is farmland that you as a municipality can't touch unless you jump through A, B, and C, which, to be quite frank, has gotten us into a lot of the troubles we're in now. So to say that it would continue to give municipal councils autonomy, it would still be coming from the province, and it would be another layer on top of the Greenbelt, which doesn't necessarily affect us, but it just creates that layer, it creates that next hurdle for us to go through. And our direction as a council is to increase density and to create more infill for those very reasons, because development outside is expensive. So I appreciate what's trying to get done here, but I feel like now we're going back you know, we're creating more regulation and more legislation.
Yeah, and certainly we don't want to create undue like hoops and hurdles for municipalities to deal with. Obviously, building housing is an extensive process and a vital one. And this specifically is designed to just ensure that those, I mean, with Bill 5, the government can just create a special economic zone and decide what's best for that area. And municipalities will have no say whatsoever. And I mean, MZOs already have a lot of those powers, but those special economic zones will be able to bypass any and all regulations and rules, any kind of coordination with other groups that need to happen, if it's First Nations or conservation authorities or what. Bill 5 will allow a complete bypass of all of those policies and procedures. And I think you would probably agree that no policies and procedures is probably much more dangerous than having too many policies and procedures. The other thing I would say, though, also is that this bill is about creating this capacity for stakeholders to decide. So rather than these rules coming from the actual government, it will be coming from the committee that is struck between farmers, farm organizations, soil science, all of those stakeholders in the food security of our province, in protecting our agricultural land. So I do understand that more regulations and rules for planning departments to wade through and councillors and municipalities to try to get through is not a good thing. Certainly we want to get rid of extraneous rules and that are in place, but I do think that with the threat of special economic zones and MZOs and having no rules and regulations considered, I think we probably, in my humble opinion, you get to decide what is best for St. Mary's, of course, but I think it's probably better to have too many checks in place as opposed to not enough. My humble opinion, of course.
Thank you. Just to follow up, but the committee that's being proposed has no municipal stakeholders in it outside of agricultural industry. So again, I come back to the fact that if us as a municipality or Stratford as a municipality wants to push their boundaries, they don't have a seat at the table, which is what you're suggesting, which again, we would be a stakeholder. So I'm kind of struggling. The bill to me seems like it's a pushback against the province, which I understand, but I'm not sure that there's benefit to us as a municipality other than creating more regulations and more committees that we don't have a chair at.
Okay, I understand your concern. I would say that if you are faced with an MZO or a special economic zone, you won't have to worry about a seat at the table because you won't have one. They'll let you know what's happening, but that's the extent of the involvement for municipalities. The threat of a complete overriding of local democracies is pretty serious. And yes, this is in response to Bill 5 and to MZOs that have been in existence for longer, because the threat of just taking those lands, as we see in Wilmot, that is not in the best interest of that community in almost everyone's opinion there. That's the threat. That rather than, and I would point out that local, farmers will be on this committee. So, a farmer from outside of Georgetown should have similar concerns to a farmer that lives in Perth County. It's all going to be about that soil health, protecting their land, making sure that they are able to provide food for communities, provide for their family, and continue to do so for their children, their children's children. I do completely understand your point about excess rules and regulations, but I would say that I think the committee will represent agriculture as a whole, and that should, in most ways, carry across the province for most agricultural lands.
Councillor Luna?
Thank you, Councillor Lucas.
Thank you, Worship. Is it fair to say that this bill could force municipalities to look at density infilling as opposed to sprawl, rather than just say, well, let's go buy 100 acres of Mr. Jones's farm, Farmer Jones's farm? We have to look internally for.
So it will not force municipalities into that, but, or at least make it easier to, or, so if a farmer wants to sell their land and they want to sell it to a developer, that is still within their rights. It will have to go through that agricultural assessment to make sure that rezoning that land still works with what's needed for the agricultural area, for the agricultural sector, for food security. But like those mechanisms are still in place. It's not going to take away, farmland is farmland forever and ever. It's just that it's making sure that farmland isn't all of a sudden sprawl without really considering those factors. So in terms of infill and density, it certainly could encourage municipalities to look that way. Certainly that's the direction, in my opinion, in Green Party's opinion, that where we should be going. And I think most municipalities like that because it costs a lot less to do that, and less impact to taxpayers as well. But it won't be mandated that way. It won't be forced, but it may be an easier path for municipalities. Not that we want hurdles in the way, like we really don't, but we just want to make sure those agricultural lands are protected for future generations.
Councillor Craig Meyer?
Thank you, Worship. So talking about stakeholders and being up to date, I believe Perth County, I wasn't really involved, but just recently new official plan, which most of the farmers would have been as stakeholders involved in. So what's the difference between what you're trying to do and what the county's already doing new official plans, et cetera, et cetera?
The difference is that this will enshrine it. Oh, sorry, thank you. Yeah, sorry. So the difference will be that this bill will enshrine those agricultural lands as protected spaces, and special economic zones and MZOs can't go in. With Perth County's official plan, MZOs and special economic zones can bypass regional decisions. They don't need to consult with regions on that either. So Perth County itself can be overridden also with where we currently are. Yeah. No, it's a good point.
Okay, good. Anything further? So, I mean, I think there is significant interest in this bill. I would suggest from some of the comments I'm hearing, we need to tailor our resolution, if there was a resolution, actually to be more.
Of course.
For example, I think the resolution from the city of Hamilton is quite different than I think one coming from St. Mary's would be, actually.
Yes, I agree.
Respectfully, as an example. So there has been an indication there is interest in the future for a resolution. I think that perhaps we need to do some more research on Bill 21 as well. Just
of course.
to have a good reading. But I do think that this is certainly a worthwhile discussion. Council's had a lot to think about. And unless there's anything further from council, we appreciate you taking the time to come, because this is an important issue for our community.
That's what we feel, and I really appreciate you guys giving me the time and your thoughts and concerns around it. So thank you very much.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you for appearing this evening. Oh, Councilor Pridham has one question. Do you have 1 second left? There you go. That's okay.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm wondering about the Indigenous communities. Have you reached out to them, and is there support for this?
That's a great question. I don't specifically have the answer for that. Certainly, the intent is to consult with all stakeholders. So where there are First Nations and Indigenous populations, I would imagine the intent would be to consult with them as they have a stake in those lands. And they were on those lands before any of us were as well. So I don't specifically have that. I can find that information out if you would be interested in that. I'll make a note for myself about that, but I can't see them putting all this effort into consulting with the people who are on the land and not consider the people who are of the land. So thank you, though. Good question. Very important question.
Okay. Super, great. Thanks very much for appearing this evening. Much appreciated. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so moving on then, we'll move on to item 6 then, acceptance of the minutes. And there was a note by Councilor Luna, was it December 9th? Yeah, could you just speak to that, please?
It was December the 9th. Councillor Lucas is listed as present and absent.
Okay, so that's noted by the clerk. Is there anything further with regards to the minutes from December the 9th? Okay, seeing nothing, then that the recommendation that the December 9th regular council meeting minutes be approved as amended by council. Someone willing to move that motion, moved by Counselor Craigmile, second by Counselor Luna. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion is carried. Item number 7 is correspondence. I have nothing this evening with regards to correspondence, which moves us to item 8, reports. 8.1 with regards to the changes to the Conservation Authorities Act. Council, this had come before council. We'd asked for more information from staff, and Mr. Kittmer's going to summarize that for us, please.
Excuse me. There it is. Yeah, so thank you, Your Worship. So yes, Council, this report's being presented tonight essentially to facilitate more information to you regarding the changes to the Conservation Authority Act proposed in Bill 68. So as you'll note in the report, Bill 68 received royal assent late last year. It proposes changes in Schedule 3 to the Conservation Authorities Act, which primarily will see the creation of the Ontario Provincial Conservation Agency, so an oversight body for conservation authorities, and then the consolidation of all conservation authorities into 7 regional bodies. You had been presented with a templated motion of support that generally is in opposition to these changes, and that was presented by the Upper Thames River Conservation Authority along with some complementary information. On December 12th, the mayor, as well as Mr. Brower, attended an information session with the province to get the information as well from them. So in tonight's report, I gave you the presentation from the province so you can understand how they are explaining the changes, and it's complemented by what is being given to you by the Upper Thames. So tonight I feel as though you have information from both sides of the story, and you can make a more informed decision whether or not you want to support that templated resolution or make your own as it relates to Bill 68, or just wait and see. So I'll maybe turn it over to the mayor because he did attend the information session when I was away, and he may have some better information firsthand from the province on this.
Okay, thank you. So as we've seen in the past, this is another example where all the changes aren't really spelled out, and we're not exactly sure what the act really means. We've gone through this with planning as well, and that is a criticism. But I will say I attended the meeting on December 12th at the RBC Centre, and there was a real good mix of people there. And in some respects, the province was somewhat conciliatory, saying, okay, this is our plan. What do you like and what do you don't like? Where do you want to go forward? And I heard consistently is that we don't want any change. And if there's one thing from this government is they believe in change, and when they intend to make change, they make change. And so it was a little bit disappointing for me because there was a number of people that were just comfortable with status quo and said, we don't want anything to change. And by the way, we're making money from campgrounds, so don't take that away from us. I mean, I'm being a little bit facetious, but that was my takeaway from the meeting. And there was a mayor that was quite angry about the minister not being there. Well, the minister can't be there at everything. I mean, there was people from the province there. But it was disappointing because there's certain things that we could suggest and feedback we could provide in terms of the scope and the size and different things we talked about. But by and large, people didn't want to talk about that. They just said, there was a lot of people from conservation authorities there. And it's interesting, I sat beside a woman who was quite nice from Long Point Conservation Authority, who operates under the 100-year floodplain model, which we don't, and said they're quite happy with these things, and talked about how much money they made off their campgrounds, so they didn't want that to take away. I mean, there was a real hodgepodge, and the reality is we're in a situation where conservation authorities in their original intent, I mean, when you talk about 1947, 1948, the first meeting of Upper Thames was upstairs in this building, actually, in the hall. And I don't know, most people know that's because there was a willingness of the farmers to protect the environment and get together and to make change. And as we've become a more urban country, unfortunately, we've got away from that, and municipalities like ourselves, we realize, have lost a lot of influence. The big thing for me that I see as a frustration is a standardization of regulation. So I would like, the province is driving at, and I agree with them, there should be a standardization because we consistently run into things that happen in other conservation, other authorities in other areas that we are not allowed to do here. And it seems to be whoever the engineer at the time is, and we can talk about the dock as a very black and white example, a dock that existed in other municipalities close by and at Wildwood Conservation Authority. And we went through 2.5 years of ridiculous meetings and engineering and extreme amount of cost to produce something that was acceptable everywhere else. In fact, the Upper Thames owned the same dock well. So the reality is the bureaucracy and the level of regulation being different across the province is very problematic. I mean, I'm not opposed to us having regulation and conservation authorities, and I understand the philosophy and the importance, but the reality is that I think, to me, when I read the resolution, it just says, no, we like what we have. Well, that's not good enough for me to support the resolution, and I think that's what came out of the City of London as well, is that they want consistency and they want change, and that's what the government's proposing. So it would be, I mean, depending on the will of council and where they're at, but that was sort of what I saw at the meeting and my takeaway. And I guess I'll open the floor. I mean, there's been a lot of discussions. I've been contacted by other mayors and different people, and to me, I mean, even when we went to the recent budget presentation, the fact that that there was no capital plan presented to us, an organization that side not having a 20-year capital plan, which has a budget that is on par to ours in terms of operational and probably controls as much or if not more land than we do. In fact, they do control more land than we do. The fact they don't have a 20-year capital plan, I think, is outrageous in this day of age of us, trying to buckle down. And again, I get it, they're under stress and so forth, but the reality is that I think they've grown too fast and outgrown their mandates in some respects, and now I think it's coming back to bite them. The bottom line is that, for many years, we've sat and seen 15, 14, 13, 10, 11, 12% increases every year and talking about it, and they only started talking about efficiencies when the Mayor of London, Josh Morgan, said, we're not going to go beyond 5%. And then all of a sudden, it's all about efficiencies and where they're at and so forth, the reality. So when you talk about who has controlled the budget process, it's been the City of London. And the mayors prior to that have, quite frankly, or the councils haven't had a lot of interest. It's been a low level. But as they've done this themselves in a lot of respects, because as costs have crept up and they've increased the mandates, which, again, we can go back to my very simple argument before. It's great to beautify and important to look after the river, but urbanization is what causes pollution. And when you have a situation, every time there's a rain event in London and millions of sewage gets dumped every year into the Thames River, all the efforts that they put forth, it's no wonder every year they talk about Lake Erie, about all the algae growing, you know what I mean? The reality is urbanization causes pollution. And this has been a bugaboo of mine for 12 years now, and we have been unsuccessful in getting results. This isn't just about Upper Thames. This is about fairness in terms of the process. And it seems like every time we get a new engineer or a new person, the rules change. That's why we have trouble. I mean, the system that we have for allowing apartment development downtown St. Mary's is ridiculous. Some lottery system or something that happened in the past. It's the most absurd thing I've ever heard. The fact that it cost $80,000 in 2.5 years for us to put a dock in that existed already in neighboring municipalities that got rubber stamped is absolutely absurd. So part of what they're trying to do, I think, is important, to standardize regulation. The other part of it, I think that we should be focusing on how big they are and how the governance structure could be. But the reality is we have a group of people that are trying to protect their own interests and don't want to talk about that, which I think defeats the process. And if they're not reasonable, the government's just going to come and say it's going to be like this. Because we've seen that before with the Planning Act and different things again, some good, some bad. But the reality is I think we have an opportunity to engage with the government. But I will say that a lot of my peers and peer municipalities, and we can see from the resolutions, the way they pass, have said, no, we don't want any change. That's not going to work, and that's going to come back to hurt us, in my opinion. Comments from council. Councilor Craigmile, what do you see? You're the rep. Can I put you on the spot? Let's get your thing.
All the data's right here in front of us. I have a few things that I've written down, but I don't want to, I'd like to hear from the other councilors first of what they think of the data that they've seen in front of them. Then I'll try and do something with my Upper Thames hat and the council hat and see how difficult that is. So I just soon go last.
No problem. Councilor Pridham.
Of course, I'm worried about the downloading costs that may occur with this new layout of Conservation Authority, assuming that there's cost efficiencies as it unfolds. I kind of like the idea of not having the silos of all the different conservation authorities and one overview and one kind of looking at it as a whole when you've got climate change and we've got flooding and such. And I know that we care about our little piece of those 7 conservation authorities. But what we produce here is downloaded then to the other down the chain into Lake Erie. And maybe we should be now looking at it as one piece and controlling that water, valuable water, and making sure that it's, you know, well cared for and in the right places. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Owen?
Thanks, Your Worship. So the mayor has hit the 2 of my biggest concerns, and basically just in page 26 here of this presentation, where it talks about the patchwork of standards, service delivery, and the lack of accountability. Just as a, you know, as a first-term councillor, it's very evident that essentially they can each operate however they like, which I think is insane. And in general, if that's what the province is trying to fix, then that's absolutely ought to be addressed. I do have some concern with the size of the amalgamation and how large, and how I imagine we will continue to be just as lost in the shuffle as we are now. But nonetheless, I think that there could be some positives out of the changes, so.
Okay. Further comments, questions? Councillor Craigmile?
I think there's a lot of extremely valuable and good things that Upper Thames does, but none of those things are at the top of anybody's list when they're thinking about what they've had issues with in the past. You know, if you look and see what the City of London said when they decided not to pass a resolution, it was just that they thought for the Planning Act they should have had better maps and whatnot 4 or 5 years ago, so to help the building and the planning people. And so it was the length of time, no difference than the length of time that you see that it took us to get something as simple as a dock in and whatnot. And I know when I'm at the board meetings there, and I'll see some section 28, I don't think they hit any of those, and there's usually over 100 items on the list. But I don't think they get on the list until the actual paperwork is deemed complete. So like I never did see through that 2.5 years of the dock or whatever on any of those lists. So you get a large, you can do whatever you want with any sort of data to make the stats look good, that you got a 95% completion date, but you don't put anything on that list. And when I've been looking after Perth South and Huron County, the complaints I've had from farmers are they did this, but they're willing to do this, but it's been months and they haven't heard anything, and all they want to do is, sure, I took some trees down by this little river and whatnot, and I've got a spot, I've told them where I'm going to plant 3 times as many here, but they won't tell me it's all right to go in. You know, those things should be very routine. So I think as far as whether you're supporting or not supporting, I think there's a lot of things have happened that I've seen over the past. Is probably why that we're not supporting, and the mayor has mentioned a lot of them. That was a continually double-digit increases, getting more staff for doing this. Something I notice is that since Wildwood Dam here was built in the late 60s, you have all these policies, but nobody wants to seem to change them or make a modification to them. So one of my biggest concerns is, something I know about is Wildwood, and I have to give a lot of credit to PN's Dave Courtnage, who I get a lot of my information from or answer my questions, but probably in the last 6 months, I recently asked, if you look on site and you see that the spillway is at a height of, I believe it's 6.55 meters, but they still have 30% storage above that. So that gets up to 8.23 meters, and it just seems to me like once, you know, I think of my bathtub, once it's filled up and it's running over, if I've got no control, then it's just leaking everywhere and whatnot. So I was talking to Dave Cartage about, and he said, there is some storage behind it. He agrees with that. However, you've actually lost any sort of control. And once you lose control, he says if it gets up to, I think he told me it was like 7.1 meters, then there'll be enough flow in the river below the dam that now you've got to start spilling over the banks. And he says, if you think you can get to 8.23, he he says downtown St. Mary's is at serious risk. So if you're saying you've got 30% storage above the baffle walls, but you're gonna put something at risk, seems like every other time you talk about something, you're saying you're protecting people and property and whatnot, and it seems counterproductive. So I think some of these things, although if you're not right there and quite understand them, you get just like, I'm not quite following this appropriately. So there's been a couple other instances where I've asked questions and asked for things, not all about policies. Sometimes it was about admin things. And you get a response, but you never get any follow-up paperwork to verify that. So that gets a little concerning. I think London, I was really teeter-tottering on the fence until I saw London didn't approve, and then the more I got thinking about it, I don't like maybe the lack of the rural representation, not that we really had a lot right now, but what's going to happen in that great big system. Then I thought, well, maybe as we notice on our taxes, we look at, we're benefiting for capital costs at Wildwood. Maybe if it expands down through Strathroy, down to Chatham, or right down to the other, maybe there'll be more benefiting, and maybe our costs will decrease. I mean, so I really don't, I think the area is going to be very large, but I do believe that there should be some sort of consistency. And for a lot of those reasons that I've seen of them not wanting to change policy or whatever, you know, I did ask even at the last budget meeting that we had, I says, well, if we make $1 million on our campgrounds, maybe we should charge 20 or 25% of that to go into capital equipment for the benefiting, to drop that down a little bit, because they do make that money benefiting off the, you know, so it's a tough one, because there's so much good happens there, but they're not the things that bother the people that you get complaints about and things. It's more along the planning line. So it's a tough one. So I probably won't support the resolution, just because, you know, there's a lot of questions still out there that we don't really know. But I think being consistent across the province, a level playing field, I think is really, really important.
Further comments? Councilor Lucas?
Thank you, through the mayor. I'll wade in on this, in my opinion. I agree, the accountability and the transparency piece for me is definitely a struggle, and just the lack of oversight or overbody on that if we have an issue, there's nowhere for us to go, whether that be as a municipality, whether that be as a developer or whatever. So I do struggle with that. My thoughts, and based on my past experience with the province making things bigger and saying we're going to see efficiencies, I have yet to see it. So I'd love to see it actually come to fruition, but I don't think we will. But I just, yeah, I struggle with the way it is now. So I have no problems with seeing some change. So I too will not be supporting a resolution.
Okay, any further from council? Mr. Kidmer, is there anything to add to it?
No, nothing for me to add. I wanted council to have full information before making a decision. So I don't think you need to specifically pass a resolution saying you don't support. I think if you simply receive their support, that would be the last this item comes to our agenda until we know more about the regulations that flow out of the bill.
Yeah. Okay, anything to add? Councilor Luna?
Thank you. Just clarification, so we don't pass a resolution that we don't support the UTRCA resolution? I mean,
I don't think you need to specifically do it. You've been asked to support it, and I think if you just simply receive this, you've received your information, you've taken no action, and that's sufficient in my mind.
Okay, anything further? All right, thank you. All right, moving on to item 8.2 then, the museum policies update. Ms. Coverley, please.
Good evening, Mayor Strachty and Council. So for a number of you at the council table, you will have seen these policies before. So the museum has 8 governing policies that ensure that we meet our ministry standards for our community museum operating grant. And we do try to update those every 3 to 5 years. So they were just due for a routine update, and that's what's before you this evening. So there were no major changes to the policies. I had outlined some changes I made to all policies. So I think back in 2020, about a week after I had these policies approved at council level, our department title changed. So knowing that we've just gone through that again recently, I have tried to just kind of future-proof them by using some more broader language. And then I've extended the review period from 3 years to 5 years, and then just some minor wording changes applied to all of the policies. And then more specifically, Emily and I both reviewed all of these policies with a truth and reconciliation lens. So we added some language around that. We've added some content around dangerous materials and firearms in our collection. And then kind of an issue out of COVID has been an increased request for people to bring their pets into the museum. So we just spelled that out in the policy that we're a pet-free place. So are there any questions specific to the museum policies?
Okay, thank you. Questions with regards to museum policies? Okay, seeing nothing then, unless is there anything to add, Amy, I'll just put the motion on the floor. No? Okay, so then the suggested motion that council considers bylaw 03-2026 being a bylaw to adopt museum operations policies. Someone willing to move that motion? Moved by Councillor Alward, second by Councillor Lucas. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Item 8.3 then is the public art and monuments policy update. Ms. Coverley, please.
Sure. So this policy has been before this council. So it came forward in 2023. So again, just made some very minor changes to this policy. Some just specifically clarifying what is and what isn't public art now that we've had this policy in place for 2 years. And then coming out of the Rec, Leisure and Culture Master Plan recommendations last year was the recommendation to include Indigenous heritage in that policy. So that addition has been made as well. Otherwise, the policy is very similar to the one you would have approved in 2023.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from council? All right, so then the suggested motion is that the public art and monuments policy be approved as presented. Someone willing to move that motion? It's moved by Councillor Craigmile, second by Councillor Edney. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Yeah, Councillor Luna, go ahead.
Thank you, Worship. So I'm just noting the title of the department now, Director of Culture, Tourism and Engagement. Well, how did that come about? Just curious.
Through conversation between Amy and myself, we felt that, oh goodness, what was it originally, Amy? Culture, tourism, and economic development was a bit of a mouthful. So we looked at some of peers who had similar service profiles in their departments, and felt that culture, tourism, and engagement better captured all aspects of the department without being overly wordy, with engagement capturing communication, and then as well engagement capturing our general approach to how we perform economic development here by engaging with business and things like that. You will note, I would, again, just for comic relief for tonight, that typically the report moniker would be CTE, but that refers to some sort of concussion syndrome. So we felt that CET was more appropriate.
And I'll defer to the clerk. I forgot to read the second part of that motion. Is that okay? It's council's understanding. It's printed and I didn't read that. I apologize. I was looking at the minutes further on, actually. So, but so if council's, the mover and seconder are okay, that was understood. Okay. Thank you. Okay, so thank you for your presentation then.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so moving on then to 8.4, the temporary boring bylaw 2026. Mr. Steckley, please.
Good evening, through your worship. This report is brought forward to seek council's approval of the annual temporary borrowing bylaw as required under section 407 of the Municipal Act. Well, it's not anticipated that the town will require temporary borrowing in 2026. Passing the bylaw ensures that the treasurer has the authority to access short-term financing if needed and maintains the town's existing banking agreements. Under the town's agreement with BMO, we have an operating demand loan of up to $2 million, should cash flow timing require it. However, based on the current cash balances and investments, borrowing is unlikely to be required for this year. Happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for our treasurer? Seeing none, then I'll put a motion on the floor that FIN 01-2026 temporary borrowing bylaw 2026 report be received and the council consider bylaw 01-2026 being a bylaw to authorize temporary borrowing for the town's operations if needed up to $2 million. Someone willing to move that motion? Moved by Councillor Pridham, second by Councillor Lucas. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Moving on to 8.5, the interim tax bylaw. Mr. Steckley, please.
Thank you. Through your worship, this report seeks council's approval of the annual interim tax levy bylaw as authorized under section 317 of the Municipal Act. So consistent with past practice, interim property tax bills will be issued in January of this year and are set at 50% of the 2025 final tax levy. Payments will be due February 27th. And the second installment will be due May 29th, with final tax bills issued later in the year once final tax rates have been established. The interim levy provides the town with the necessary cash flow to support ongoing operations and service delivery until the final tax rates are established. The penalty and interest charges remain unchanged. And total billings from the 2026 interim tax levy are estimated at approximately $7.8 million. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. This is something we do every year. Any questions from council? Okay, seeing nothing, I'll put in the motion on the floor that FIN 02-2026 interim tax bylaw 2026 report be received and the council consider bylaw 02-2026 being a bylaw to authorize the collection of an interim property taxes for 2026. Someone willing to move that motion? Moved by Councillor Alward, seconded by Councillor Luna. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Okay. Thank you for your reports.
You're welcome.
Okay, moving on to item number 9 then, council reports, and we'll just go around the horseshoe as per usual, if everyone's okay with that, and I'll start with Councillor Craigmile, please.
Thank you, Worship. So I guess in your package, let's start with BRA. In your package there, I think it's 3 or 4 pages there that you should really hang on to for memory. If somebody's asked you a question about it, you know, because it's got a good introduction there and provincial policy and the regulatory comment and everything in there. So I'm not going to regurgitate everything there, but I think it's real important everybody reads. But I do want to bring you to, in case you missed it, right at the, towards the end where they talk about processing changes. So now when they've gone to, for the residential, the plant is open and that they're going to go to in North Dumfries. There's a few of them around the province. So the actual Blue Water Resources is just a transfer station out taking the residential and trucks it. So they have a compactor there and they compact everything and it goes into trucks and it'll go to North Dumfries. Therefore, the sorting that used to be done there is now just sorting this year for the commercial. So they're still doing it, and that's why they're still staying with the, for the commercial people, the old list of the things that they could actually. And we'll see how it goes this year, and who knows what's, you know, we'll give it 6 or 7 months. But they're hoping to get more commercial in there, and, you know, maybe even get back of shift. But that being said, if you did notice reading it, they had to get rid of one shift. So now there was, effective tomorrow, there's 7 people laid off. They were given notice well in advance, given fairly large bonuses, being very good to them if they stayed till the end. And because now we needed extra drivers with extra trucks, since the province told us since the producers told us we couldn't put residential in with the same, we had to hire new truck drivers. So I believe it's either 2 or 3 of the people that were laid off went to truck driving school, which BRA paid for and whatnot, and they may still be there, but you know, just to keep employment and whatnot, so that the layoffs weren't quite as bad as what was potentially envisioned. So every time something happens, you know, it's not all good. You know, every time you start talking about having to lay some people off. But I thought what was really interesting in there at the back, if you really pay attention to it, I've got to the right place here. It talked about landfills in the province. Where's that data? Here it is, landfill capacities. I thought that was really good on page 122, where it's talking about updated reporting from the Waste Resources Ontario highlights growing pressures on Ontario's landfill capacity. And they're saying there in 2024, approximately 73% of Ontario's disposed waste was managed within the province, 27% to the US, without experts. And so now if the US stops our exports, that they think our capacity at landfill stations will be empty in 2034. That's not very far away. So you can see there's a lot of pressure there. So thank goodness the town, we're well looked after here for our own for a while. But so I think something that, then what's also included there is the acceptables, the non-acceptables, and we're still working on it. So I'm not gonna get into that too much, except for everybody to be aware that the acceptables is different between residential and commercial, and that's because the commercial still being at the BRA is going through the station. So bringing that up on BRA, I very briefly brought it up with the CIO before the meeting. And I know that Michelle is going out to different councils to give some presentations. I'm not sure that we need a council meeting for presentations, but what I think would be really valuable would be a meeting. We could have it here in the council chambers, but a meeting, absolutely council should be there and ask a question, or, you know, to kind of have a little informal, structured but informal. But I really think that in the next month, there's going to be a lot of questions from the commercial people. And I think to give an opportunity, so I'd really like to hear from council whether they think this is something that we should really be thinking of. And I think it'd be also valuable for Mr. Blake and Jed to show up to, you know, ask some typical questions that they might have. But anyways, what does council think?
Councilor Howard?
Thanks, Your Worship. I'm in full support of that idea, just even having had some discussions with BIA members as of last night and prior to now. I think it's almost necessary that we start to have those discussions in a public forum, and I think that that's a great idea. So.
Get the mic back on. I'll move on a little bit to PAC. So there's been no meeting since December 1st, although what was said to go to council at that December 1st meeting will come to our next council meeting, January 27th, and that is, I think it's the 27th, and that's at 236 Queen, that's Queen and Salina. So that'll come for public meeting. The Lincolns, of course, they've got off their schedule, so they're actually meeting right now. I don't think I haven't heard of anything with them, so that's good. One thing I did hear about the Lincolns though recently is that they had an injured goalie and they thought it was going to be out 5 or 6 weeks. So they picked up a goalie they've had the last couple of years. The trading deadline was like last Saturday, so it had to be done quickly. And so I'm not sure if the injured goalie is on injured reserve or if he's gone somewhere else. Or I don't really know anything too much about that. But they're on a roll. I think they've got 10 wins in a row or something like that. The top teams in the league are extremely tight, so that part's good. Last Tuesday evening, I was at the St. Mary's Minor Hockey meeting. No issues for the town. There was one thing that was discussed there that I thought was a completely interesting stat, something I should share with council. So they talked 4 years ago. The minor hockey, their total revenue was $400,000. So today, total revenue is at $700,000. Now that increase in revenue is not because the cost to play hockey have increased. It's because we became an A center and they had to take extra teams. So instead of having a team for 2 years apart, they're every year. And then you've got some people from outside the community coming to play as an A center and whatnot, that the male and female registration astronomically is way up. That being said, we now know exactly why there's no ice time available during prime time. That's why it's all used up. So I thought that was interesting when that came up. Upper Thames, I think the last meeting was December 16th. We've said a lot about Upper Thames earlier. I should say that even at our last meeting, business is proceeding as normal, but as expected, I mean, there's many anxious moments over the unknowns caused by future amalgamation. I mean, you can just see it in the staff movements, et cetera, et cetera. So, it's easy for us to sit here and say one thing, but they have no idea how it's going to affect them or what the amalgamation is going to mean. And it's not going to be an easy setup when you amalgamate all those and you've got non-unions, unions, and it's going to be a mess. Anyways, the Community Liaison Committee, we had a meeting December 11th. And December 11th, we had an evening meeting. So maybe to hope to get more people out from the community. Of course, nobody turned out. But again, the meeting is good and what we talk about is interesting. And sometimes we say things there at the meeting that become even more interesting than one of the gentlemen on the, actually on the committee, he says, so if you're only getting that many complaints, it looks like most of them are coming from me. So when you start looking at the number of complaints you get, and then if they're all, if you get 7 complaints and 4 are all from the same household, it's extremely difficult, especially when you talk to about odors, because, the 8 of us in the room here, we may not, one of us might smell something, I think it's terrible, and the rest of us won't smell anything, because it's so perceptive or whatever. So I found that very interesting at that meeting. And I don't think there's too much else I've got to say, so I'll leave it there.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Councillor Craigmile? Councillor Luna?
Thank you, Worship. I'm not sure who to direct the question to, but you mentioned, going back to the BRA report, about the landfill capacity being exhausted by 2034. I'm just wondering, right now, are there regulations that can force us as a municipality to accept waste from other municipalities? Or is that something that could be forced on us?
Through your worship, I guess in theory the province can legislate anything, but as of right now, our specific compliance approval is only for within the boundaries of St. Mary's. So we are only permitted to accept waste from within St. Mary's, and that's why when you go to the landfill, they ask your place of residence to ensure that we're not taking waste from outside. Again, as a creature of the province, if they said, landfill is, is now something that is much needed, and we're opening it up for municipalities to take waste from anywhere, and we want you to take it from anywhere, I would still hope that at some point through the process, there'd be a local municipal decision whether or not to exercise that new authority.
Councilor Craigmont?
Thank you, Worship. And I think one of the things is you know how long it took us to get we had to go EA to get approval here. Well, they're trying for the approval on the way to, on the 402 heading down towards Sarnia, the large landfill there. They can take all kinds, but it doesn't seem like a long time to get all those approvals done, but I imagine there'll be some speed up process involved for them to get that done. I know they're working on it right now. So it's just getting through that red tape.
Okay, Councilor Lucas?
Just thank you through the mayor. Just a question, again, coming back to BRA, that I thought the report was well done. Will we have an idea of costs associated when the president or whatever, when she came? Just, will she be far enough down the process to understand what kind of costs we would be assuming, and we're not to that point yet?
I don't want to answer for her. She might have an idea, but I don't think it's fair to talk about cost yet, because I think once she has an idea of cost, I think Dave and Jed will need 6 or 8 weeks to try and have option 1, 2, you know what I mean? So I would say no.
And that's one of the biggest concerns right now that I've talked to certainly some commercial customers about. I mean, if I'm going to be forced to pay for the recycling, why would I do it? And it's a real concern because it seems counterintuitive to what we're trying to achieve, actually. Yeah. If it's expensive, why am I'm not going to offer recycling,
I think I've said it before. I mean, one of the real issues I've seen right from the start with this is that I think it's going to impact our landfill.
Yeah, no question. Yeah. It's a real concern. Okay, anything further, Councilor Craigmont? Okay. Councilor Edney, please.
Thank you, Worship. I have very little to report. A couple of my meetings had actually been canceled for personal reasons, so I have very little to report. But just to further on the CLC meeting that Councillor Craigmile mentioned, Kara put together a fantastic presentation. They're always great presentations, but she really dug into the analytics to really help us understand. And I think I've said this before, Council, too, but I don't think it would hurt once a year to invite that group in for council to get, if it's once a year, much like the presentation we got last month. It kind of summed up the entire year, and it really kind of showed us the impact on the community. And to Councillor Craigmile's point, they're just fascinating, interesting. And we have a better understanding of our own community and the impact of the cement plant. But yeah, that was an interesting meeting. That's all I have to report.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Okay, Councilor Luna, please.
Thank you, Worship. The Community Policing Advisory Committee met, I believe it was in December. They have a new dog with the department, and I've had the pleasure of meeting her. I can't remember her name, but she's a lovely dog. She's just gorgeous. And she's like an emotional support dog for people that, are going through trauma and stuff. And it's a really good addition to their force over there. Spruce Lodge met just before Christmas and are meeting next week. They've had an issue with a resident who just keeps going out the doors somehow. They've done everything except put up bars. They even had to get guards for the doors for over a couple of weekends to keep this gentleman from leaving. It's been a real issue, and compliance has been in several times about it. Public health, they're looking at a 2025 balanced budget, which is good news. I sent an email to council and staff this afternoon that came from the unit about the heavy respiratory season. It's in full bloom. We had a question at our meeting last week about, this gentleman went to the ER or a clinic and with respiratory symptoms, and they didn't test him, and he was questioning why he wasn't tested to see what it was he had. We don't now because now that we're past COVID issues, as we know more about COVID, they're not testing to see if it's RSV or flu A or whatever, because the recommendations are the same for no matter what it is. Wash your hands, drink plenty of fluids, take acetaminophen, don't visit grandma, and if you get really, really sick, go to the Emerge, but don't go to the Emerge just if you're feeling punky. Just stay at home. And so the recommendations are the same for no matter what kind of a virus is affecting you. And we talked about the difference between enteric symptoms and flu symptoms. People often say when they have gastric type symptoms that it's the flu. It's not. It's an enteric, and it's really important to distinguish that vomiting and diarrhea are enteric and respiratory is the flu, influenza. And it's not too late to get vaccinated. And I can't say that often enough.
Okay.
Nurse and me.
Yep, no, thank you. Questions for Councillor Luna? Councillor Lucas, please.
Thank you, through Mayor. I also have a very short list. I was away for the Heritage and Culture Advisory Committee, but we saw the updated policies and procedures here tonight, so I think that was a lot. I know the mayor attended that meeting, but it looked like that was all that was discussed. And Spruce Lodge, I attended with Councillor Luna. It's good to know that they're running a surplus and a good surplus, so I think we're gonna see some money put back into an operating reserve, which got depleted a couple of years ago with staffing concerns. So I think that's awesome to see that they're on the good side of things. So yeah, we'll continue to monitor that. And I think that was all I have to report on.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Councillor Pridham, please.
Thank you. I really haven't had any meetings into this new year. So there is one thing that's coming up on the 28th, is a Wednesday at Shackleton's auction, is where the Chamber of Commerce is having their after 5. So from 5 till 7, you can go in and preview this auction. It's a live auction and it goes live at 6. So it's kind of an interesting event. You can see the things and then choose to bid live at the auction if you want or not. So register if you're interested, and should be a fun time.
Okay, thank you. Anything for Councillor Pridham? Councillor Alward, please.
Thanks, Your Worship. So the BIA met yesterday, January 12th. We had a delegation from Tracy, the owner of 162 Queen Street, St. Mary's. She discussed her Bean Social, which is the first Monday of every month from 9:30 to 11:30 a.m. Essentially, it's just a coffee and networking event with entrepreneurs, and it's try to keep it local, but obviously all are welcome. She's done it since November, and she had 9 to 10 in November and 15 in December, so it's scaling up slowly, which is excellent. She also made mention of the Business After 5 event that the Chamber hosts, which is actually on the same day as the BIA Soup Crawl. So the Soup Crawl, which we're doing on February 25th, essentially we will be taking registration from business owners to make a soup and just kind of put it out around 6 p.m. that evening, and all are invited to come on down and judge the soups. And the winner, there was discussion of some kind of soup trophy, but that's still in development. But nonetheless, there will be some sort of a prize for the business owner with the best soup. So you should start seeing a poster for that sometime soon, and registration will end at the end of January. So if you have a local business owner that makes a killer soup, I would encourage them to get involved. Beyond that, we had a priority setting session with regards to beautification, and it sounds like a priority this year will be potential new seating for downtown, as well as a rework of the selfie station. Beyond that, I have nothing to report.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Councillor Alward? Okay, seeing nothing then, I will the motion on the floor that committee and board minutes listed under agenda items 9.1 to 9.18 be received, and that the verbal updates provided by council representatives on those committee and board meetings be received. Someone willing to move that motion? Moved by Councilor Alward, seconded by Councilor Luna. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Okay, I have nothing under emergent or unfinished business, nothing under notice of motion, which leads us to bylaws. The suggested motion that bylaws 01-2026, 02-2026, 03-2026, and 04-2026 be approved by council. Someone willing to move that motion? Moved by Councilor Edney, seconded. Councilor Pridham. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Under upcoming meetings, January 20th, strategic priorities at 9 o'clock. January 27th is regular council. I will be absent. Deputy Mayor Alward will be in the chair. Anything further about meetings anyone wants to talk about? Councilor Luna?
I believe that January the 20th meeting is the one we're asked to come early for a picture taking. Is that correct? 8:45 or something?
Oh, okay. Thank you for that reminder. I did see something about that, but I didn't put it in my calendar, actually. So anything further with regards to meetings? Just, it's a little bit topical tonight. I've been summoned to a meeting with all the mayors in the region with Josh Morgan on Friday. They want to talk about the Upper Thames thing, or the Conservation Authority thing. So I don't know what it's about or whatever, but it should be interesting, actually. So I'm going to meet. I don't know what that is, but I just want to make council aware that it's an ongoing discussion. Anything else with regards to meetings? Right, I'll move on to our confirmation bylaw then. The suggested motion is that bylaw 05-2026, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of this meeting, be approved by council. Someone willing to move that motion? Moved by Councilor Pridham, seconded by Councilor Craigmile. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion's carried. And finally, the suggested motion this meeting be adjourned at 7:22 p.m. Someone willing to move that motion? Moved by Councilor Lucas,